Now on BBC One, who will be London's next mayor? Eddie Nestor quizzes some of the candidates hoping to win the capital's top job in front of a studio audience.
London. Over 2,000 years of history. 9 million people, one mayor.
Next week, you get to decide who that mayor is for the next 4 years.
They will have a city hall budget of around £20 billion and will spend it on
Policing in what is a challenging time for the Met. So what's the most important thing, do you think?
Reducing knife crime, definitely.
housing as the crisis of accommodation continues.
How big an issue do you think housing is in London?
I'll tell you what, where the area where I live in, we was able to buy houses back in the day. But now the younger generation coming up, they've got no chance. And it breaks my heart to see what's happening now.
And transport, a vital job to keep London moving.
Less strikes would be nice, thank you very much, because it is very disruptive.
And culture. It's what makes us who we are.
I'm Eddie Nestor. Don't you dare go anywhere. This is BBC Radio London. My name's Eddie, and tonight we'll be hearing your questions on what's important to you. This is a Mayor for London. Good evening and welcome to a Mayor for London. 1 week today, Londoners will go to the polls to vote. And tonight, over the next hour or so, we've got a studio audience here at the Bernie Grant Arts Centre in Tottenham, and they will be quizzing 4 of the main candidates to see which one of them is worthy of the job. Let's say hello to Susan Hall from the Conservative Party. We've got Rob Blackie from the Liberal Democrats.
Hello.
We've got Zoe Garbett from the Green Party, and we've got Sadiq Khan from the Labour Party. Let's get straight to it, shall we? Let's start with the police. This week has been dominated by issues concerning the Met, who've had a challenging time in recent years with a string of high-profile scandals, huge questions of culture, trust, difficulties with recruitment and their marshalling of demonstrations. Let me ask the audience now, show of hands, please. Who here, broadly, is happy with the police? I guess that means the rest of you are not particularly happy. Let's start with you, Sadiq Khan. You've been the mayor for 8 years. This has got to be one of the most challenging weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've said for some time now that the police has systemic and cultural issues to do with race, to do with misogyny, to do with homophobia. And that's ultimately why I lost confidence in the last commissioner and asked Dame Louise Casey to go in and do a report into the police service. And it gives me no satisfaction that she concluded that police service was institutionally racist, misogynistic and homophobic. So we have a reforming commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, who has my full support, but also I hold him to account to make sure we improve trust and confidence in the police service. And Eddie, in 11 years as a Member of Parliament and 8 years as Mayor, I've met many victims of crime and bereaved families. This is the one issue that keeps me up at night time. The causes of crime are complex. I'm not excusing it. Deprivation, poverty, alienation and lack of opportunities. And they've been made much worse over the last 14 years. Cuts in the police, cuts in youth clubs, cuts in public services, less opportunities. And I'm afraid across the country, you've seen a big increase in crime. And across the country, less confidence in our police.
Sadiq, let me bring Susan in now. Susan Hall, I just wonder, what would you do differently, first of all? And do you essentially accept the Casey report, homophobic, misogynistic, ableist, racist? Do you accept it?
Right, thank you for asking the question. I have been listening to Londoners for the past year, so I'm not surprised by the lack of hands going up. And it's a very sad situation. Trust and confidence has gone down to 51% in the police, and it has never been lower. We must address this for everybody's sake. And if we look, knife crimes up, violent crimes up, sexual offences up. This is why people are not happy. So I do have a plan, and my plan is to go back to borough-based policing.
Well,
so you
that,
get,
Susan, but and I'll give you the chance
I'm just
to say
explaining.
That. But no, the question was,
would I do something differently, which is what I was just going to explain. what
And
I'd like to do
you accept the
differently.
Casey report also?
Yes, but I'd like to tell you how I'm going to do things differently. I want to go back to borough-based policing so there's better accountability for each borough for their police force so they know who is in charge of the police in their area. I want to put 2 new bases back in every single borough so that police officers will be working from a base that is near the people that they're going to be looking after. So Londoners will get used to the peace in their area. That's really important. I will put in an extra 1,500 police officers into London, which will make things better, and a £200 million injection into the police. We must get trust and confidence back in the police. It's never been as low as it has been now after 8 years of Sadiq Khan.
Let me go to the audience. Thank you very much, by the way, Susan. I'm just wondering, to me, that question was essentially about confidence in the police. It seems to me the police are spending quite a lot of time now looking inward, and therefore, how can they look outward at the same time? I take what Susan has said, but in terms of confidence in the ability of the police to reform in the way that maybe many of us think they should, anybody have confidence in that? Anybody have a point to make about the police? The lady in pink.
I don't think, personally, is that we can allow politicians to look after our police force. I just think they're indecisive. It's this policing by media, and therefore we need to give power back to the police force through a commission or something else. But we can't trust politicians. Okay. Every single day they have the same load of waffle about nothing, and nothing is improving. People can't trust the police because the thing is the police is playing into the hands of the media.
OK. I wonder if anybody else... Thank you, by the way. Anybody agree, disagree? The lady in the blue?
I just think the problem's not with lack of police, it's not properly vetting the police, which is what I think we should be doing more.
OK, vetting the police. Let's pause there for a moment, shall we? But staying with policing, let's hear now from Talisha.
In 2017, I lost my younger brother, my only brother, Jermaine Goupil, to knife crime at the age of 15 years old. He was sadly stabbed multiple times on the way home from a summer holiday activity. He wasn't involved with a gang, but unfortunately it was mistaken identity, and this is what's led me here today, advocating and campaigning against knife crime in London. So I founded a foundation called JFJ Foundation, and what we do, we go into primary schools and secondary schools and work alongside the Met Police and other community organisations to educate around knife crime and serious youth violence. Here in Croydon, we've had a lot of serious youth violence, mainly in 2021, where we had the highest teenage murders, and we feel it as a community. Tackling the issue of serious youth violence in particular has to start at a community level. If you don't understand the community, you'll never be able to tackle the problems that we're having today and what we're facing in this current climate. I would like to see change in our policing, so I would like more police presence on the street for everyone to feel a lot more safer. Also, more investment in our young people in their community and the resources that they need to be able to have better futures. My fear is that if nothing changes, we'll be in an endless cycle of serious youth violence. Coming back to my personal story of losing my brother, I don't want any other family members or anybody amongst my community or anyone that I don't know to go through what I've gone through and my family have gone through.
Talisha, sorry about your brother. And thanks so much for being here. I'm going to let you ask a question of our candidates. But certainly, I wonder if you accept the point that, you know, so much of it has been, as account of Sarah Everard, Bieber and Nicole, Carrick, all those stories, so much of it looking in. Do you personally have confidence, first of all, that the police as they stand can help you?
Not at the current moment. I do believe that the current issue around stop and search is only doing so much. I do think it's quite limited in the impact that it needs to make, especially around knife crime, as we've seen a serious spike in serious youth violence, and the ages are getting younger and younger. I go into primary schools and secondary schools, and we've got primary school children carrying knives.
OK. And is there a question that you would like to ask our candidates?
Yes, the question is, obviously, there's a recent spike in serious youth violence and knife crime in particular. What have you thought about, other than stop and search, to actually make an impact and change what's happening on the streets of London?
Rob, come to you.
Yeah. Tanisha, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. Nobody should have to go through that. This is why I'm standing to be mayor. I read the Casey report and I was horrified by what I saw in it. On sexual offences, police officer in there saying, but the conviction rates are so low, they may as well say it's legal in London. That's just unacceptable. And that's why my top priority is to fix the Metropolitan Police. And one of the things we've got to do is get more police back on the front line. We've got 6,000 police in London, experienced, trained people stuck in the back office, doing jobs they shouldn't be doing, who need to be out there solving crimes. We also have to rebuild the relationship between the community and the police. Actually, I think stopping and searching young people for cannabis is a complete waste of time. But more than that, it damages the relationship between people and the police, because most of those people are entirely innocent of anything. And of course, generally, that experience is not a positive experience. And we know from the Met's own statistics that people go and tell their friends and their family when it happens, and it's not positive. And the reason that matters is when somebody carries a knife, they tell their community. They do it to intimidate people, they do it for protection, but they tell their community. So for every knife being carried, there are people in the community who know about that.
Yeah,
but no, hang on. If people have a bad relationship with the police,
who tell me, they also do it because they're scared. It's not just
that's also true. But the point is that
I'll come back to you. But let me just bring in Zoe here. And you see, it might feel as though I have an agenda, but certainly I take calls every day on my radio show. And while all the candidates here are saying let's have more police, does it matter the type of police we have?
Well, I think this goes back to the question about vetting and recruitment, which is essential. We need to make sure that whoever's coming into the police service are the right people with the right values and the right skills, and then they've got the support within the Metropolitan Police through cultural competent training and, you know, really understanding the diversity and respecting the diversity of London. So it matters who's coming in and the support that they get from the Met to do the job. But just to pick up on your question, I think what we need to do to solve youth violence and keep young people safe is exactly the kind of inspiring organisation that you've pulled together to go into schools. Like, you are doing some incredible work with young people. And I was in Croydon a couple of weeks ago with the Met, and they were saying that some of the successes they had have been working with, it sounds like, your organisation or organisations like yours. And that's where we need to be investing. We need to be investing in youth services. We need to be investing in education, you know, making sure young people have hope and feel really included in our communities.
OK. Before I come back to Sadiq, I just wonder, is there another point that anybody would like to make? The gentleman in the blue jumper, please.
So, going back many years, there was the Stephen Lawrence incident, and they've just reopened the case. And recently, there's a Sarah Everard case. Nothing's changed in all those years. So how can we believe that the Metropolitan Police are going to change going forward?
Sadiq, 8 years in charge. That's a damning indictment, isn't it? This week, Doreen Lawrence again received an apology after 31 years. A member of our audience there saying nothing has changed.
Well, I'll come to Doreen in a second. I spoke to Doreen this week, but I want to speak to Tanisha first. I'm really sorry for your loss, and I know JFJ do great work in Croydon. You know, we fund the Mines Project, which is doing remarkable work. And I know the Drummond and Whitgift very well where you're at. Look, I don't think crime's inevitable. I think it's preventable. I think the way we should deal with crime is like we do with a public health issue. You deal with the infection, take the knives off the street, stop it spreading, but stop the infection occurring in the first place. Look, youth clubs have closed down. You know this across the country over the last 14 years, including Croydon. Youth workers have lost their jobs. After-school clubs have gone.
It's always somebody else's fault, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you've been in charge of the police for 8 years.
And so what we're doing, Tanisha, and you know this in Croydon, is investing in youth workers, investing in youth clubs, having mentors for young people, incredibly important so they can flourish and thrive like Jermaine would have done.
But
Stephen Lawrence would have done.
We'll come back to but Rob has a point, isn't he? 1,000 people or more have died since you've been mayor. Do you accept any responsibility?
I was responding to Talisha's point, which is we are investing because I feel responsible for young people. Look, I could have been one of the young people who got involved in knife crime. I was raised on a council estate. My youth club saved me. My boxing coach saved me, which is why we've invested, against Tory opposition, £45 million in a Young Londoners Fund. But to go to Doreen's question, which is really important, I spoke to Doreen this week. It's this week, actually, Eddie. 31 years this week, 22nd of April. And I remember it well, because I'm from Tooting, Eltham's down the road, where Stephen was murdered. And I did meet with the Commissioner this week. We had an hour meeting with the Commissioner. He's agreed for a separate police force that the family have confidence with to look at the assessment the police have made.
But they don't have confidence in the Met. That's the point. It's all fair and well to say she has confidence in an outside police force. What Doreen Lawrence said this week is that she did not have confidence in the Met. And it feels for lots of people like they're 31 years of apology. I will let you answer that, and I will come to the audience, so please get yourselves ready. Susan, I just want to say, what's your take on what you've heard thus far, and how might you start to stop this scourge of knife crime?
Absolutely, and I'm so sorry for your loss, and I think you're very, very brave to come here, because it opens it up again, doesn't it? And I'm sorry about that. But you are right, something has got to be done. We can't carry on as we are. It's been an absolute failure for the last 8 years.
So what would you do?
So what I would do, first of all, I'm more than aware that young people don't like stop and search. They don't like the intrusion of police officers putting their hands in their pockets, etc. But the biggest thing for me is to getting the knives off the street. So I would give every frontline officer a knife wand, which is like a metal detector. That, you know, if you're in the airport, you just get one like that, and they can see if there's metal there. So they can tell by that if you're carrying a knife. It means there's no physical intrusion, and I think that would help mending the situation between people not wanting to be physically searched.
How would you pay for that? Do you know how you'd pay for that?
Let me finish this and I'll come to you. The other thing, of course, we know that knives are taken into school. We know that. So every high school would be offered a knife arch if they wanted them, because I appreciate you can't make them, so that they could get kids to walk through that. Hopefully that would stop.
I would like, because I quite like it when you address each other, if I'm honest. I quite like it when you challenge each other, and then we as the audience can get involved. Yeah. Is there anything that you've heard, anybody, that tallies with your thinking, that you think, oh, I've heard something great today, I've heard something fantastic with the gentleman and the glasses and the grey top?
I wouldn't say there's been something different, but one thing I do like is that what has happened over the last few years is the closure of youth clubs and stuff like that, and that's what we really need. I don't care whose fault it is, if it's the Tories' fault or it's the Labour's fault. This is what we actually need.
It was Greens in City Hall that exposed that over the last 10 years, 50% of youth services have been lost, and then pushed the Mayor of London to invest in youth services. And we are really committing to protecting those. I've worked with some incredible youth services in Hackney, where I'm a councillor, and they're essential.
Yeah, carry on.
OK, so look, I do want to get one more from the audience, and I wouldn't be able to leave it if I didn't ask about protection for women and girls. The lady to the furthest right there.
Another grassroots organisation that has benefited from the work that you've been doing. I've only heard 2 mayoral candidates speak about the work that we at the grassroots level are doing. But could you have more communication with us? Can you speak to us about how you're holding MOPAC and the Mayor's office respectfully, and also the Met staff accountable with their buy-in with your plans?
Let me start with you, Zoe. What could be done that isn't being done to better protect women and girls?
So if we're staying on the police, the fact that the Metropolitan Police doesn't record if a crime is motivated by the hatred of women, I think is a failure currently in the Metropolitan Police. Other police services in the country do that. So that means that we're not tracking if a crime is motivated by misogyny or the hatred of women. So therefore, we're not taking it seriously within our reporting and not addressing it. So women aren't feeling heard. And we know that women really don't trust the Metropolitan Police. We saw that in the Angelini review. Making sure that women can trust the police service is essential. and also investing in organisations that
jump
support women.
One of the most damaging things that I heard, Sadiq, after the Sarah Everard case was a number of women saying if they were approached by a lone police officer, they would not get in that car. That's awful, isn't it? Isn't that where society breaks down?
Well, they're right to be concerned because of the experience Paul Sarah had with the officer who used his warrant card to abduct, rape and murder her. There are three things we've got to do. One is prevention. So boys at school are taught about healthy relationships. They're taught about how to treat and respect girls. Really important to start in schools. The second thing is to target the perpetrators. GPS tagging, make sure there's a stalking unit, make sure there are more police on the streets, really important. And the third thing is to support victims and survivors of violence against them. We don't just fund independent sexual violence advisors, independent domestic violence advisors. We're going to fund, if I'm re-elected, legal advice to women as well. But the woman who raised the issue of vetting is really important. It's far too easy to become a police officer, far too difficult to get rid of officers. And it's not just some rotten apples, as the Tory candidate thinks. There's cultural issues in the police service. They should be anti-misogynistic, anti-racist, and anti-homophobic. It ain't just rotten apples.
But problems with attacks on women and girls, it feels societal, you know.
Spot on. That's why you've got to start early.
We've got to catch people because 40% of sexual assaults come from a repeat offender. And what's happened under the mayor is we're now catching half as many of those sexual offenders as we were when he came to power. And I think that's shameful. But it's also very important. It means more terrible crimes.
But any point is also about the respect of women more generally. I talk a lot about
do you think that's got? Do you think that's hard? Do you think that's got much worse in the last 8 years?
Can I just clarify? Can I just clarify? Sadiq Khan keeps pointing at me in this misogynistic way he often has. But I have never said it's just a few rotten apples. There's far more than a few rotten apples, and it needs to be dealt with and it needs to be got out of the Metropolitan Police. Until it does, women in particular will not feel safe, which is why I will bring in a women's commissioner. It's no good carrying on as we are now. It's not working, is it?
Okay.
Women do not feel safe. I'm a woman. I know women do not feel safe.
We'll leave it there. A reminder, this is a Mayor for London. For those at home, you can have your say on X, formerly known as Twitter, by using the hashtag BBC London. And join me tomorrow on BBC Radio London from 6 in the morning to share your thoughts of what you've heard here tonight. Let's turn our attention now to housing. London's housing shortage is a perennial problem. House prices, rising rents and a shortage of social housing mean that many simply cannot afford to live here in the capital. Let's hear Shiri's story.
Over the last 24 years, I've rented in London. My son was born in a rented flat and we're still renting. People like me don't have options. My dream was to get on the council list. The only thing I could do was just keep paying landlords. I paid over £300,000 to other people. I bought them a house. Renters have no protection in the city. We pay all the money and all the power is with our landlords. For some years, we lived in an unregulated house of multiple occupants. We had to take the landlady to court once the council found over 26 different violations of our safety. I've had to move again and again. The political system doesn't work for people like me. It works really well for landlords, for bosses, for people with inherited wealth. It doesn't work for the people that I work with, the cleaners and the care workers and the teachers, people in the voluntary sector. It doesn't work for us. I'm a Londoner. I lived here most of my life. My child was born here, I work here, all our friends are here. Why should we be pushed out of London? People like us who can't afford to own but can't actually get socially housed are just in this tight corner. So many of my friends have been broken by London and basically had to leave. I would like to ask the candidates, what are they going to do to ensure that more social units are being built in every London borough so that everyone could have access to truly affordable, good quality homes in our neighbourhoods?
That's Shiri giving her point of view. Before we go to the panel, I just find out, does that story tally with anybody in our audience?
And me.
Could I ask the gentleman with the beard and the white top, please?
It's what is affordable? Like, give us a number. Tell us what that looks like to each of yourselves, because to me, what's affordable in London isn't. It doesn't exist. So I'd be interested to hear. Any more points? The lady at the back with the black top.
Social housing is not available, for example, for a working family with two people earning the average wage. They're not eligible for social housing, but there's no chance they could afford to buy in London. What do they do? Where do they go? Building more social housing doesn't help them. How do you make housing more affordable for working families?
I think I'll come to you first, Zoe, on this one, because you've got a lived experience, quite literally.
Yeah, I've got my hand up.
Yes.
I'm currently a private renter, and lots of that story chimes with me. I can't afford to buy a property where I live, where I'm a councillor, and I know how insecure it can feel and how priced out people feel. And just, being on the side of renters and making sure we have secure communities is good for everybody, because people make those connections, they make those neighbourhoods. There's people on my estate that say they can't get involved in the TRA because they're worried about getting evicted. So being on the side of renters and creating safe communities.
I know how great it is. It's good for mental health. It's good for. We all know that.
So we need rent controls.
But what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
We need rent controls in this city to bring down private rents.
I don't think the mayor has power over rent controls.
No, but we need to.
I think you know.
We need to set up a rent commission full of renters, so we get renters deciding what the best deal for renters is, and can loudly call on the government to get those powers. It's absolutely essential. But I think the question was around council properties. We've pushed the Mayor of London so Greens on City Hall have pushed the Mayor of London to buy existing homes, so not just building homes, so councils can buy properties that are for sale. They're often bigger, so you get those family properties. Okay, so we can get those
buying back council homes.
Yeah, buying.
Right. Susan, what would you do? Can you understand? Does that anything that you heard from Shiri relate to you?
I understand that we all want somewhere we could call home and set down roots. And we know that communities are better when people set down roots and form communities around them. People feel safer, people feel more secure. There is one answer, and that is more has got to be built. We've got to build more family homes. We've got to get more units out there, because if you do that, you'll have more properties to sell.
Yeah, and the more, I don't know about our audience. I just say that forever, I'm a Londoner through and through, and forever, everybody's talked about building more homes. Does anybody here have any confidence that more homes, or indeed enough homes, will be built? Anybody have enough confidence that it will be built, first of all? Gentlemen in the green, your thoughts?
I don't understand why developers have all the influence, have all the power, and the prices they're charging is it's prohibitive. Ordinary Londoners cannot afford to live in London.
Ordinary Londoners can't afford to live in London, Sadiq.
Yeah, can I deal with the three questions, with your permission, Eddie? So look, I call the election on May the 2nd a moment of maximum opportunity. Why? Because we've got a chance this year to have a Labour mayor and a Labour government working together to address the very issues you are talking about, more homes in London. And I mean affordable homes. You asked what is an affordable home. When I became mayor, the previous mayor's definition was one costing £500,000 to buy, or 80% of market value to rent. So you asked what's my definition. It's one of three things. A council home, that's linked to a manual worker's salary. We have started building more council homes than any time since the 1970s. Or it's secondly, a home where you pay a London living rent. That's linked with average earnings. It's a third of average earnings. Or it's a third. The third type is shared ownership part by part rent. And you're right in relation to those who aren't eligible for council homes.
Forgive me. It is
intermediate homes, and that's what you'd be eligible
for. For many people, the biggest issue. Isn't the answer, Rob, that we're just not building enough homes?
Absolutely. The housing crisis in London is completely out of control. Anyone here who rents will know that rents have shot up. Anyone who's tried to buy is probably doing it with family money, because if you don't have family money now, you can't afford to buy them.
So we kind of know the problem. All of you are taking time to illustrate. Just forgive me for a second. But it's really important to me that we get through the subjects and we get answers for these people here, many of whom are undecided about who they're going to vote for. And you're all brilliantly articulating the problem. Well, then give me the solution.
OK, so the mayor has something called the London Plan that tells everyone how they have to build in London. It's got an incredible number of rules, including how high is the ceiling in your flat got to be. And that makes it harder to convert houses to make them to better flats, makes it harder to build. that slows down the building. It stops us building enough.
I think more importantly in the London plan, it's making sure that any new builds have a higher percentage of council properties built into them, and you're holding the developers to account to deliver it. Because we've seen so many areas change hugely by the properties that are allowed to be built, and they're luxury homes, people getting priced out, and areas completely changing. So we must hold the developers to account.
You wouldn't have a percentage, would you, Susan?
No, but I see Sadiq Khan nodding. He's been in charge for 8 years, and not enough has been built. And if you listen to him giving you the stats, he'll talk about starts. I've started this much, I've started that. A start could be a hole in the ground. It's not a home, it hasn't got a front door, it hasn't got a roof. It isn't somewhere you can live. These starts mean nothing. I would change the London plan, I would open the London plan up straight away.
And how would that help?
Because it is so bureaucratic. Sometimes these big developments take over 2 years to get through planning.
How would that help people who need social housing?
Because I grant you it will take a while because it's got to filter through. We've got to build more. There's no question.
Sure
and I'm saying...
It's really how much time we've got. I'm going to come back to you, Sadiq. I'll come back. The gentleman with the glasses over the front, the dark top.
So I want to ask, you know, all of you are planning to be mayors now. What would you do to make sure that, you know, there are less homeless people in London and more people find their family homes? Because, you know... Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I think we know. We've got 66,000 households in temporary accommodation. There is no one here, I don't think, who doesn't see what I see, which is mattresses on the pavements on our high street with increasing regularity. That's on your watch, sir. And if that's happened on your watch for the last 8 years, why should people have confidence that you would do anything different in the next 8 years?
Well, look at the progress we've made despite the government, which is really important. These are 64,000 homes completed that are affordable, 320,000 homes completed that are on the market. But if you rip up the London plan, it means the developers have a carte blanche. And that's why you can't rip up the London plan. You and I spent time talking to the survivors of Grenfell. That was with deregulation. That's why we need high standards for all our homes. Yep. And I'm not going to sacrifice quality for council homes as well. And that's why I say this year, Labour government, Labour mayor, that's a game changer.
You said you'd stop homelessness in London in your last manifesto. You said you wouldn't sleep until you'd done that. And yet it's up in the last few years.
I'm happy to deal with the issue of rough sleeping. We've, over the last 8 years, taken 16,000 rough sleepers off the streets of London. More than 3/4 have stayed on. But there's more and more people coming to the streets of London, and we've got to help them, which is why working with councils and charities and the government, we will end rough sleeping by the end of this decade.
Susan, I'm going to give you the last word on this. Do you lobby? I mean, we've had a Conservative government for 14 years. Any time have you lobbied the government for London?
Yes, on fairer settlements for Harrow Council when I was leader of Harrow Council. And I speak to James Cleverly regularly. I'm so concerned about policing in London, I really am, as are everybody I speak to and listen to. Yeah. Yes, of course, I know lots of different members of government, but I would lobby any Labour MP as well. Okay. It's important that the Mayor of London doesn't blame everybody else for anything that goes wrong. Okay. We must never forget he's got a £21 billion budget, and therefore the Mayor of London should start taking responsibility, because a leader takes responsibility. Okay. And Sadiq Khan just blames everybody else if something goes wrong.
OK, Sadiq, I'll give you the last word. In answer to that, you blame everyone else. You don't take responsibility. This has happened on your watch. What say you?
Look, 5 years ago this week, the Greens and Labour managed to persuade the government to get rid of no-fault eviction. You know, if you complain to your landlord about damp or the rent, you can be evicted for no fault. The government agreed to our lobbying to get rid of no-fault eviction. This week they've caved into the developers. They're not going to get rid of it. We can build with the money that we've got 40,000 new council homes, 6,000 new rent control homes. We've got the money to give free legal advice to any tenant with an unscrupulous landlord. But with the Labour government, on top of that, the Labour government's promised 1.5 million homes in the first term, a big chunk are going to come to London.
If you get that. I mean, the London plan says, 53,000 a year. I don't think any mayor has achieved anything like that in terms
of the good news,
housing.
You've missed your housing target almost every year.
Not your own, Sadiq.
We've smashed the government target.
But not your own. Is anybody here got anything to say, just to wrap up our housing subject? The lady in the white top and glasses, please.
Yeah,
I don't know where you're putting these homes. I think someone said earlier that there's brownfield land. I don't think there's anywhere near enough. I think one thing we should be looking at is the greenbelt land, understanding what it is and what it isn't, and how that could be used to.
Any more points? I'm going to take as many as I can. Gentleman at the front here.
It's rich from the Liberal Democrat candidate to say we need to build more homes, considering in Stratford, your own MP for Richmond Park, Sarah Olney, is blocking it because it ruins her view of St Paul's Cathedral. And secondly, on social housing, I believe personally that it'd be much more important to just simply increase our stock of all housing, because simple demand and supply. If you increase the supply of your private homes as well as your social homes, prices will start to fall in the long run. It seems at the moment that the plan is affordable, and developers cannot afford to bring in projects of that amount with social rent caps at such low.
Yeah, there are also issues of tenancy. People tell me about cladding. People are scared to make complaints to their landlord in case it means they haven't got a place. I'll take one more from somebody I haven't heard from, a gentleman at the front there.
With some schemes, like Help to Buy, it's the houses or generally properties are overpriced. Usually the younger generation, like my son, 17-year-old, he told us that probably be living with us until he's 30. And those wonder whether those 21 billion pounds can be spent somehow, to help those young people to sort of get on the property ladder properly, not being in the kind of negative equity or other things. And it will be profitable, for everyone for the future, rather than, being forced young people to move.
Can I speak to your son? Hopefully your son speaks better than mine. I won't be able to understand my son. You hope to ever buy a property?
I do.
Why is buying a property important?
I believe it gives you something to own. It's kind of pride. So you're kind of owning something instead of renting. And also it lets you build wealth for the future because it's an asset. Yeah. So it's more than a home.
Yeah. OK, well, I wish you the best of luck. But you may well have to rely on the bank of mum and dad. Lots of people here in London. I do hope we can come back to this subject. I hope that people at home can tune in tomorrow and listen to BBC Radio London, 6 o'clock in the morning. Goodness knows how I'm going to wake up, but I am going to be there because it does feel really difficult, certainly in Hackney they're closing primary schools, which is always an indication that, younger people don't feel as though they can stay in London. Now to transport and environment, how we get around our city and how we do it without polluting the planet. We're going to hear from two people now who I think it's fair to say come from opposite sides of the debate.
The 20-mile-an-hour limits on main arterial routes, they're just unnecessary.
We need more local infrastructure like LTNs, more cycle lanes.
Park Lane used to be a 4-lane road. It's now cycle lane, bus lane and one general lane. And the knock-on effect to the traffic is tremendous.
There's a lot of uptake in cycling in London and we need to push that forward rather than taking a step back. A lot of people, they really would like to cycle, but they just feel it's not safe enough for them. Women have different demands in infrastructure than men. They really do a lot more local journeys. They don't want to end up in dark parks after night, so it has to be important that it's well lit, that it feels safe.
The lack of road space that we've lost, mainly to cycle lanes that are underused, the LTNs which restrict vehicles, and all they do is push congestion onto other roads.
When you cycle on a busy road, even though there's a great cycle lane, you still breathe in all the pollution from the cars. We are in a climate emergency, so we really have to take these modes of transport much more serious than we do at the moment.
I understand we have pedestrians, we have cyclists, but we also have road users and a lot of them. And we just seem to be left behind on every single decision.
So there we have it. Paul?
What I would like to ask is, as Mayor, what would you do to ensure that the licensed taxi can continue to provide an efficient service to the many Londoners that rely on us.
And Mariam, good evening to you.
I would really like to know what you would do to support wheeling and walking as transport form in our city. We have a net zero emission target for 2030, so how would you support that to achieve that?
So it's, you know, completely challenging, competing areas there. Rob, let's start with this one with you.
Very simple. I met London cab drivers the other day. Most cabs in London are electric now. You drive around all day, you've got to charge up your cab. That requires a fast charger. There's only 70 of those in London for cab drivers to use. I think it's really important we get a lot more of those, because we can't expect people to switch over and keep on using those cabs as electric cabs if they're not easily chargeable.
You answered a completely different question. I think the question was about road space.
I apologise, I forgot.
You know,
I was so excited by being about to talk about that.
No. It's about road space. I'll give you a chance to come back to us. But Susan, your response, please, and you pick either side you like, where they are completely different, aren't they?
Let's not divide people. I think it's the same problem.
Is it?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, you would say that, so we all agree. Well, OK, I'll come to you, Susan. Maybe Zoe will make it easy for you.
No, I don't need anybody to make this easy for me. I know exactly where I stand.
OK.
On the war on motorists that we're suffering at the moment from Sadiq Khan. So to address this gentleman's problem in the first place, we're down to 15,000 black cabs because it is so difficult now. I absolutely believe that where buses go, taxis should go. These 20-mile-an-hour limits that are on the main roads are just dreadful. Our streets are clogged up now, which it means we're not got a flowing city. A successful
children safe.
No, please let me finish. A successful city is a moving city, and anybody that goes around in a cab or anything else...
You can walk, can't you?
Yeah, but
you can cycle.
Do you know what?
You can get on a scooter.
Some people can't. Some people have got young children with them. Some people are disabled, and the black cabs are fantastic because you can have their wheelchair enabled. We've got to look at ways that everybody can get around our city better. Everybody. And at the moment, it is gridlocked.
I'll come back to you. Zoe, what's yours? Because it feels to me incredibly adversarial. It feels like, you know, it's difficult to make one side happy without...
It's not the side. We're all Londoners living in the city. We all want clean air. We all want to be able to move around efficiently and reliably.
You'd have road charging, Zoe.
So I think talking about
Zoe,
this issue,
you would charge per mile, wouldn't you?
I would have a conversation with Londoners about making the charge
let's be honest. You would have road charging.
So I'm a fan of road charging because I think the charging system we've got currently is unfair. I think people are going a very short distance or making one trip, in a day and paying a large amount for that. And it's all about making sure that people are paying for the time that they're on the roads. But I think this question was about how do we free up space on the road? And that's all about making public transport more affordable so that people that can move on to public transport, they can. And your question is really visionary. Like, how do we create beautiful spaces that people can spend time in?
I think a black taxi would say he or they are public transport. So that's the point.
Oh, no, but that's essential. I meant other car users, people who could be making a trip in another way, like another car user who might be able to move. We want to create safe cycling infrastructure so that people that aren't cycling can cycle. It's not for people who are already cycling. It's to shift people from different modes of transport, and that's how you free up the roads. So they're essential cabs, and we know that you serve about 20% of the people that you serve are disabled Londoners, and that's really essential.
So I will come back to you because this is quite a big subject. I just want to bring in Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan, inevitably we're going to get on to ULEZ in a little while, but in terms of this, as you analyse the way you've done it, superhighways, low traffic neighbourhoods, ultra low emission zones, do you think that you have brought Londoners with you?
We'll find out on May the 2nd. But here's the point. We've got to make sure we make it easier for people to walk and cycle. I'm really proud we've increased sixfold the amount of safe cycling for people like you. I'm really proud that we've frozen TfL fares in 5 of the last 8 years.
That's not true. Hang on, that's not true. It's only true if you don't count travel cards. If anyone wants, put up your hand if you think that travel cards aren't a TfL fare. I mean, they're kind of obviously TfL fares, but on Sadiq's definition, they're not.
So we've saved the average Londoner £90 a year by freezing fares in 5 years.
Would you admit
21%?
Do you admit you don't count travel cards as a TfL fare?
It's a 21% reduction according to inflation. But in relation to
would you admit,
fares.
but
there are people who do believe that it came in quite conveniently just before the mayoral election.
5 of the last 8 years, Eddie. The bus fares in London are the cheapest in the country, and the hopper fare means unlimited bus travel.
We've been to the government 5 times for bailouts.
No, during the pandemic, 3 times. But let me deal with the 20 miles per hour, which is a really important point raised. Look, if somebody's knocked over at 30 miles per hour or more, you're 5 times more likely to die or be seriously injured. You go and speak to a bereaved mum whose child's been run over by a car going more than 30 miles per hour. Every year, more than 3,000 Londoners killed or seriously injured. And so I do support councils who have good LTNs. Where they're not good, we try and persuade them to change it. We've got to recognise our population is growing. We want people to walk, cycle, use public transport and drive clean cars.
OK, so I'll come back to our guests on there. I think we have some of the slowest moving traffic in Europe. I'm interested in what you think, though. Anybody that got any... I will come back to you, Paul, but let's get some more thoughts. Lady in the blue jumper, please.
I'd love to hear the panel's opinion on what you're going to do about the rising train fares, because as a young woman, tonight I'm going to travel home by train because I don't feel safe to walk, I don't feel safe to cycle on my own, and I don't feel safe to get in a taxi by myself. So the safest option is to get the train, because there's the British Transport Police, there's people on the train with me, but still, it's so expensive.
You feel
even with a rail
safer on
card.
a train than in a taxi?
Yeah, if I was with other people in a taxi, I'd feel safer on a taxi. But if I was on my own, I would not get a taxi on my own.
Gosh, OK. Any more thoughts, please? I'll go back to the panel. Gentleman with the hat.
Yeah, just in regards to the cycle lanes, it's funny how you've got a cycle lane which was the pavement, and a cycle lane still on the road, and then there's not a differentiation of which one to be used. So there's still a lot more traffic on the road, whereas if there should be a law that the cyclist should use the cycle lane that's purposely built instead of being on the road, so they both are separate, because there's still accidents happening where cyclists are still on the road and they're not using the purpose-built cycle lanes that you have built.
OK. Let me come back to Susan, and I'm going to come back to you, because ULEZ was central, as I understood it, in the beginning of this campaign to your policy. It says, you know, you'd get rid of ULEZ on day one, Susan Hall. Is it really still a thing?
ULEZ expansion, absolutely it's a thing, and I will absolutely get rid of it on day one. There is no question. I have spent a year listening to Londoners. And when you listen to the problems that Londoners who cannot afford to replace their car, so they have to use their car, they have to then pay Sadiq Khan £12.50 a day. They cannot afford it. And sometimes they have to go and take parents to hospital appointments, they have to get to work. It is a real situation. Not in inner London, but if you go to outer London, some of the stories...
Yeah, but not everybody here lives in Tottenham. And we heard the ladies going by train. So let me just find out. I don't know where you live. But for you guys, is ULEZ still a thing?
Yes.
Show of hands, please. Gentleman in the blue shirt there, very smart blue shirt. Why is ULEZ still a thing?
I understand where the current mayor is coming from, trying to reduce pollution in the capital. However, I believe that the wrong people were penalised, the users were penalised, whereas the manufacturers knew way in advance that the EU regulations were coming in 2015. However, we are being penalised because we're the easy targets. I'm happy to change my car if I was compensated properly, rather than a £2,000 scrap, which in my car is worth £10,000. I would be losing £8,000 if I had to scrap my car.
Anybody else on ULEZ specifically? Gentleman at the front
here. I second what the gentleman said earlier. Coming into London is becoming increasingly difficult. I come here 4 times a week. Public transport is not reliable. There's strikes, there's problems. And if you're not eligible for a scrappage scheme, you have to pay £12.50 to drive your car. So London has to be a global city. How do we compete with the likes of New York, Dubai, Singapore, when we can't get people in and out?
Would anybody get rid of ULEZ? So a little bit more, a few people,
Eddie,
not
Eddie,
overwhelming.
I'm not hanging my whole thing on it. ULEZ expansion will go on day one because it is nothing but a tax on the poorest.
How will you get that 200 million? That's 200 million pounds.
Let me just finish.
200 million?
Let me finish.
Yeah, well, you know, when people ask each other questions, we're quite interested in you guys asking each other questions.
Can I
you
finish?
You and Sadiq seem to get really annoyed by it. But honestly, I don't know what the audience say, but I quite like it.
Yeah.
Where would you get the 200 million pounds from?
If I can just finish making my point. You mentioned paper mile earlier to Zoe.
Yes.
And I would absolutely not bring in paper mile because that will affect every single one of you that drives. The ULEZ expansion is nothing but a tax. Sadiq Khan brought it in on the pretext that it would make London's air cleaner. He had a separate impact assessment done. He had it done. TfL had it done. It said it would make virtually no difference whatsoever to air quality. It is a tax, and it's a tax on the poorest Londoners. It is the right thing to get rid of it.
Sadiq, I've heard Susan talk about you a lot. She talked about your book, and I was fascinated. Until Susan mentioned it, I hadn't read it, you know.
Promoting your book for you.
Yeah, well, no, thank you very much. You kept saying page 186. It was 186, 187. It's a book breathed by Sadiq Khan, published May of 2023. Plans to introduce more comprehensive road user charging system to be implemented, Sadiq, you said in your book, by the end of the decade. Why the U-turn on paper mile? Why the U-turn?
Because we don't need it now, because we've expanded ULEZ to cover all of London, and we've seen the roadside emissions across London down by 50%. But also in my manifesto, I set out how now all of our buses will be zero emission by 2030, but also we're going to have 40,000 electric vehicle charging points. We get to net zero without the need for paper mile, but I've also instructed the Commissioner...
How are you going to tackle congestion then?
I've instructed the Commissioner to make sure any work that began under Boris Johnson is stopped in relation to paper mile. So when the Tory candidate tries to scare Londoners in relation to saying this won't happen under the Tory...
Well,
it won't happen in the Labour either.
You say scare, but surely it's legitimate to pick up something that you wrote in a book and to use that in an argument when the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone wasn't in your initial 2021 manifesto. Susan, I'm going to let you come in and then I'll come back and let Zoe and Rob...
I'm grateful for that. £21 million has been spent on this already, and you know that. £21 million worth of Londoners' money has been spent looking into putting in paper mile. Sadiq did a podcast, I think it was for the Evening Standard at the end of last year, talking about paper mile. Sadiq Khan said he would never bring in the ULEZ expansion, and he did. Nobody trusts you anymore because you said you wouldn't do that. You're saying now, and you may be smirking, but this would actually really upset so many people. You are saying that you wouldn't bring in paper mile. All the evidence is there that there's so much work already been done on it. There's evidence in your book. There's evidence on...
But he's saying here today that he won't do it.
Yeah, he said he wouldn't put in the ULEZ expansion. Look how well that went.
Well, it's gone so well that he doesn't need to bring in paper mile.
He said he wouldn't do it, and he said he wouldn't do it, and he has.
But, Rob, let me come to you first.
I think the first phase of ULEZ for Inner London was a real success because people had 3 years to adapt to it. I was one of those people. To my surprise, I discovered my car wasn't compliant. But because I had a couple of years, it wasn't so difficult. In outer London, Sadiq brought in ULEZ with about 9 months' notice. And that made it a lot harder for people to adapt. And I think it's really important we make it easy for people to adapt environmentally. I've worked on environmental issues my whole life. Elephant conservation, climate change. And I think the reason I'm saying this is really important. We have to take people with us if we're going to make these big changes for the environment. If we have too much controversy around it, people will rebel against it and we won't be successful. We've got to be.
Too much controversy. So how disappointed are you? Because it does feel like a Sadiq Khan U-turn. As a Green Party member, how disappointed are you? No paper mile.
I think, well, this is all about fairness. And what I've been saying is I'd have a conversation with Londoners about the charging model that they'd want. I wouldn't say I'd bring it in immediately. But I think this is about fairness. I think, we've got a current charging system, and I think the families you talk about, Susan, would benefit from a paper mile system because they'd be paying less, because it's all about not just having that one charge for, one day. It's about looking at how heavy people's cars are, the general emissions, how far they travel, where they travel. It would be cheaper if you're in a place with less public transport, for example. And it's all about making public transport a lot cheaper and getting people ready by improving public transport and improving the connections, especially in outer London, and then looking at the different solutions for inner London. But we need bold, you know, we are in a climate emergency. We need that climate leadership.
We need bold. I just wonder, you know, just notwithstanding, you know, what has come to you from other members, Sadiq, if as Mayor of London, and I'm speaking particularly to the idea of ULEZ, with the benefit of hindsight, is there anything that you would have done differently?
No, it's really important to understand that none of us would put up with our children or parents drinking dirty water. Why put up with dirty air? You and I spent a lot of time with Rosamond, the bereaved mum whose daughter Ella died on a preventable death because Johnson buried the report in 2013. Children with stunted lungs, adults with a whole host of health issues from asthma to cancer, dementia, heart disease. This is an issue of social justice, an issue of racial justice, and I'm proud lives are being extended, that there's less asthma because of our policies.
Well, those are all the questions that we have time for tonight. Unfortunately, in a minute, we'll ask the four main candidates to tell us why they think that you should vote for them. But a reminder, there are 13 candidates in all, hoping to be London's next mayor. For more on each of them, including their own one-minute manifestos, head over to the BBC London website. One last opportunity, OK, tonight for the candidates here to address the audience and indeed you at home. Each of them have 30 seconds. Earlier, we drew straws, and Sadiq Khan is first up.
I love this city. This is a close two-horse race. A vote for me means free school meals. It means affordable transport. It means more council homes. It means more investment in youth clubs, in the police. It means somebody who unites our city rather than divides us. But all this is at risk if the Tories win. If you believe in a greener, fairer, safer London, vote Labour on May the 2nd.
Thank you very much, Sadiq Khan. Rob Blackie.
The Conservatives cannot win in this election. Don't trust me when I say this, trust Susan. She sent this letter to my wife saying that she couldn't win this election, but I don't think Sadiq Khan deserves to win. My top priority will be to fix the Metropolitan Police, to get police back on the front line and to ensure police are working on the crimes that matter.
Zoe?
I love London. Our diversity is our strength, and I think everyone's questions here have really spoken to the heart of some of the key issues in London. I'm a renter, I'm a councillor, I'm a health worker, which is why I'm really passionate about addressing inequality in this city. I'll always be on the side of renters and workers. I want to make our city way more affordable so that people can live here, grow old here and bring up their families here, and we don't see schools closing. So I'll extend the free school meals to secondary school children, I'll bring fares down, and I'll always be on the side of renters and get us rent control.
Thank you very much.
Vote for what you believe in and vote Green.
Thank you very much. Susan Hall.
I've lived in London all my life. I brought my children up in London and I love it, and I want to see a change. We've had 8 years with Sadiq Khan in charge. Things are going horribly wrong. The ULEZ expansion is affecting those with the least amount of money. Nobody should ever put a tax in that will affect the poorest the most. So I'll stop ULEZ on day one. I absolutely will not bring in paper mile, which would affect every single one of you. The Metropolitan Police needs help, more resources. And when I listen to Londoners, they say they want to see more police on the street.
That's
I
your
will
time.
supply that.
That's your time.
Please vote for me
Thank you
on
very
May the
much,
2nd.
Susan. You've heard from the candidates there. Now you can have your say. A week today, when the polls actually open. In the meantime, the debate continues tomorrow morning on BBC Radio London at 6 a.m. With me. And check out Having a Mayor. It's fantastic. It's on BBC London, on our website, where you can listen to our political team. They digest and break up and maybe answer some of the questions that perhaps weren't answered today. And if you missed anything, you can watch it back on the iPlayer. But for now, that's thanks from the candidates. Thank you very much to our audience. I appreciate you very much. And thank you very much to you watching at home. And remember, do not forget to bring ID on polling day. Good night. Well, it would be lovely to hear what you thought. Did any of the candidates answer the questions in the way that you thought they should have been answered? Were you screaming at the radio? Whatever was happening, wherever you are, it would be lovely to hear from you. So tomorrow from 6 a.m, I'm going to be on the radio. We'll have some of the people who were at the debate. We'll have some of the contributors, but really I'd like to hear from you. If you're listening to this broadcast right now, I take it that you're interested in London politics. You're interested in policing and crime. You're interested in transport. And like me, you're interested in housing. So set your alarm clocks nice and early. Join me, Eddie Nestor, tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. Now, I'll give you the email now if you'd like to write it while you're full of passion and all of that. It's eddie@bbc.co.uk. You can, of course, text 81333. You'll have to start your message with the word London. Also, just phone. 0800 731 2000. That's 0800 731 2000. Look, I have got to tell you that I was trying to wind them up, was trying to get them to speak. What defined this particular husting, let's call it a dehusting, as opposed to a debate, is that you could hear there were people like you, people like me in the audience asking their questions. Now, that's a really important part of it. They haven't all been together at many of these hustings, and it was really important for people to have their say. So if you want to have your comment on the people that may well be the mayor of our city, then I look forward to hearing from you in the morning.